We are live. Willie, thank you for joining me today. Can you hear me? You got you got your mic on? Did you turn your mic on? Oh, here it goes. It says connecting to audio. There you are. Can we hear you now? Let me see. It says your mic's off.
Yeah.
There
Okay.
it is. Good job. Hey, welcome, man. Thank you so much for coming on today.
Oh, thank you. I'm glad to be here. And thank you for making the time to do this on a Saturday with my work schedule and all that.
Oh yeah, man. I got the time. I just usually try to go live on Wednesday nights, and your streams have been fire lately. I've been watching your stuff, so I think it's it's cool to see I guess the dirtbag left kind of coming together to some degree. And I stopped even calling myself a leftist a little while ago. I started using like post-partisan and post-duopoly, but
I think that kind of fits along the lines with the dirtbag left, so that works for me too.
Totally. Well, so I wanted to start off today talking about something that is a little more closer to home for me because I live on the West Coast in like the Hollywood area where the writers and actors are striking. But it's something that I think I touched on it on my last stream, because I feel like the biggest problem, the biggest shit lib contingent or brunch lib contingent is Hollywood, right? I mean, that's a big part of it. Would you agree with that?
Today's Hollywood, absolutely.
Yeah. So I think I saw this bit with Bryan Cranston and even Fran Drescher, who I lifted this piece we're going to show from Due Dissidence stream when they were talking about Fran Drescher. But I feel like this writers strike is like, it's kind of it's a good unification point between like for class, right? Because now Hollywood understands the working class. They're having to unite and strike. And it's funny because I was thinking about this today. People used to say, I don't know if you remember this or not, but I'm sure you do. Conservatives used to always go, Hollywood doesn't represent America's values. And I always thought, as someone who's lived in Hollywood for like the majority of my life, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, because there's no greater, like Hollywood is middle America. Everyone comes here from different parts of the country. Like George Clooney's from Tennessee, Ashton Kutcher's from Iowa. You know what I mean? So it's like, I feel like Hollywood is actually the best representation of the country as a whole.
Yeah, I think Hollywood's a state of mind in a lot of ways, especially when Hollywood's doing their job. I mean, there are problems of Hollywood, but there's problems everywhere.
Yeah, well, and I recently I want to read into this more. I know I'm going to have to get some books about Hollywood and the CIA, but I just watched this Joe Rogan thing and I did this little piece about the Laurel Canyon thing and how basically what they were saying is that, I mean, it's a conspiracy theory. There's no proof, but there's a lot of like circumstantial evidence that's pretty fishy. And what the overall claim is that the 60s anti-drug or the 60s drug, like free love, anti-war movement with all the hippies and all that was designed by the military as a military op to discredit the anti-war movement. And the proof that this guy provides is in Laurel Canyon, there's this thing called Lookout Mountain where they did it's a sound stage that the CIA used to make all these propaganda films. And then all the people who were like musicians, I mean, I don't say that they were musicians, but like Jim Morrison and Frank Zappa and all these people were like, had parents that worked in military intelligence.
Well, I don't put anything past what our intelligence agencies would do, but I think that maybe it evolved naturally, but they probably used some people. We don't know who they were, totally. But yeah, that's more along the lines of what I think might have happened.
Yeah. And I played it up in my piece. Like I made some joke like Jim Morrison, like, you know what, it would be untrue. I'd be a liar if I was to say to you that I wasn't a federal agent, but I don't think Jim Morrison was actually a federal agent. I just use that to like, make fun of the whole situation really. But his dad was the head of the Navy during the Vietnam War, which is kind of suspicious.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of these hippies and and the New Left movement in the 1960s, a lot of them did come from an affluent background, and I think that it was a liberalism, left-friendly society in its Overton, Windsor, compared to today, and I think that that's where a lot of these people gravitated toward, as I said, I think that maybe the intelligence agencies decided to go and take advantage of it. But I think that they also infiltrated the right, and I think that that there's infiltration on the right, undercover on the right, undercover on the left, and I even think undercover in the middle. They're everywhere.
Yeah. Well, I was thinking about it today because I'm like, it's so frustrating, right? Because no matter who we vote for, we get the same thing. And it's like I constantly rail on the Democrats, but I'm not going to vote for the Republicans. Like they're even worse. Not even that they're worse at this point, but they're just as bad. You get the same garbage with them. So it's kind of like,
well, the Democrats are basically the Republicans at 55 miles an hour.
Yeah. It's a slower. I mean, I honestly think Jimmy Dore's argument that the Democrats are the greater of two evils is a valid argument, because his point is that when the Democrats are in control, they're able to do things that the Republicans couldn't get by within a million years. I mean, if you look at the Hunter Biden thing right now, that's a great example where it's like, if that was Trump's kid, the press would be going ape shit. But since it's Biden's kid, they're covering for him,
But in fairness, Fox News are not going to go after their own either. That's the thing right there. So as far as I think that Jimmy Dore's basically saying, he wasn't saying that the Republicans are absolutely better and further to the left of the Democrats. I mean, that would be insane. But I think
that's not what he was saying.
Some people want to interpret it that way.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. That's yeah. But the thing is, what he was arguing, and I was thinking about this today, it's like, do you think that we would have escalated the Ukraine proxy war as much if Trump was president?
For this reason, I don't think it would have happened, because I don't think that Trump was pro-Russia. I don't think I've always dismissed Russiagate, but
that's bullshit.
But yeah, I think that in this one area, he would have been a better person to solve the issue than Biden, because I think that with the Democrats, in the case of the Russian-Ukraine war, and I think in their regard, I think that this is being done to cover up Hunter Biden. This is also being done to please Hillary Clinton for supposedly getting Donald Trump in the White House in 2016. I think that I don't agree with the cultural conservatism of Vladimir Putin or Russia, but I think also there is a little bit of that involved. And again, I'm opposed to their social conservatism in Russia, but Ukrainians society is even further right wing than Russia is on these questions, and nobody ever talks about that. So
no. Well, I got us off track a little bit. Let's watch this clip real quick so what Russell's talking about. This is back to the writer's strike. He's talking about the future of Hollywood, and he makes some really great points about how what's going on in Hollywood right now is here. Let me just make sure I got the sound on. Sometimes I forget to turn the sound on when I do this stuff, so I want to make sure that that's on.
Yes.
But he makes some really great points, so let's listen for a minute.
Similar to what you're seeing with the UPS guys, right? Like, it's not that the money's not there in the system.
Willie, you don't have to turn your video off when I'm playing videos. Just at that beginning part when I do the count in is the only reason.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine, man. I appreciate it.
To the actors, to the writers, and so on. Now, that having been said, unlike UPS, where if anything, the trend of the world is towards having everything shipped and not actually going to a store to buy something. So this is a business whose profitability is only growing. This is a business that reflects the future.
So just to pause for a second, one of the reasons I was playing this clip in particular is because he's also drawing the comparison between the unions, the UPS and the Hollywood unions.
Whereas Hollywood, I would say part of all of this tumult is that Hollywood itself is a dying business model. Why do you have an industry like Hollywood? Because there's a bar to entry, because the average person can't generate the resources to make a movie, right? So you have an industry of people who have the capital to provide the cameras, to provide the sets, to provide the necessary labor. The combination of outlets like YouTube that allow schmucks like us to just distribute content, run it up the flagpole and see who salutes, with what AI technology is going to allow you to do with your software in the next few years, Hollywood is not going to make any sense anymore. You might have a remnant industry there, but we're moving into a world where we're continuing this trajectory of little niches with its own personalities, with its own celebrities. This is part of why you can't get
he makes such a good point,
right? Look, for example, in our little universe, right? In our little universe, Sabby Sabs is an up-and-coming rising star, right? Cenk and Anna are very famous. Nobody knows who the fuck these people are. You go up to the average person and go, hey man, you know who Cenk Uygur is? I don't know who the fuck Cenk Uygur is. And that's about it. That's the biggest name in the space, right? But very famous within this space. That's the world we're moving into. That's where things are going, where you're just going to have little sub fiefdoms of fame depending on people's particular interest. And what's really going to kill Hollywood, when a 12-year-old is going to be able to pull up ChatGPT and make a movie, what the fuck you need Hollywood for anymore?
Right. No, absolutely. And
so anyway, that's the main part. What do you think? I think Russell's nailing it. I think he's 100% correct.
Russell is nailing it. But also Andy Warhol mentioned this in the 1960s, that we're all going to be famous for 15 minutes. You and I, just like Russell and Keaton and Sabby Sabs and Cenk Uygur, are living examples of this. I mean, the average person doesn't know who we all are, but in the online love space, and people kind of know. If they don't know who we are today, they will probably in the next year or two.
It's true. To that point, I think it was Tucker Carlson talking to Tulsi Gabbard, and this was like a while ago, and he asked her, because she has a podcast. Tulsi Gabbard has a podcast now.
Yeah.
And he asked her, how big's your audience? And she's like, oh, I just started it, but I think I have like 500,000 subscribers, because she's Tulsi Gabbard, so people know she already had a name. She's already in the spotlight. But Tucker goes, in a couple months, you'll have a bigger audience than MSNBC does, and he's right.
Mm-hmm. And she's it's amazing how the most obscure 2020 Democratic candidate for president, who should be pretty much a footnote in American history, is a very well-known person. Of course, thanks to Hillary Clinton, what she did to destroy Tulsi Gabbard's career ended up backfiring.
Yeah. Well, on that note, on presidential campaign note, that's a good segue to our next topic, which is RFK Jr. And it's kind of like, I don't know which. I think I'm going to play this gray zone clip first, because I think this is the thing about RFK. My take, and you've probably seen me say it before if you watch my streams at all, but I love that RFK Jr. is out there saying and doing the things he's doing, because he's injecting things into the mainstream debate that wouldn't otherwise be there. But I don't think he's going anywhere. He's in the Democratic Party. He's definitely not. I mean,
yeah, it's the Democratic Party. We know what happens in primaries.
Right.
Yeah.
We've been to this rodeo a couple times already.
Yeah, we got the battle wounds of 2016 and 2020's shenanigans by the Democrats.
Yeah. So listen to, I wanted to go longer on this, but listen to Max and Aaron talking about RFK here. I'm always paranoid that I didn't click the sound box. Hold on a sec. Okay, there it is.
By the presence of Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in the presidential race, not because I endorse him as a candidate, not because I was going to go work for him or something like that, that I would ever do anything like that, but just because he was providing a platform within the race, a high-level platform for many of the things that we've been saying. And he's someone who listens to us, who's had us on his podcast.
I just want to say too, I trust Max's views on Israel probably more than anyone because A, he's Jewish, and B, he's been in the thick of it for a long time.
Yes, I would say I would agree.
I am doing this not just because I think that journalism is so inherently great, but because I see it as a means to an end. And in this case, the end should be the end of this proxy war before it turns into a hot war. And so I saw him as a positive force on that account. I liked some of the things he had said about the lockdowns, about criticizing the mandates. And so I thought it was refreshing to have him there. Now, Bobby Kennedy Jr., after being kind of sold out by a New York Post reporter at an off-the-record event where he made some convoluted and unusual remarks about genetically targeted bioweapons, about COVID being potentially genetically targeted. I think he was like referencing 2 studies. He wasn't necessarily saying what he was accused of saying, but he was accused of saying that Ashkenazi Jews are less susceptible to COVID, which, you know, maybe that explained my whole like fearlessness in the wake of this devastating anthrax-like virus. But that he was accused of saying,
I just love watching Aaron's face while Max talks.
Allegations of anti-Semitism, which, if you're a coward, you will take as the death blow to your political campaign or anything you do, and it will force you to overcompensate. That's kind of how the U.S. propaganda model operates. Yeah. You know, with Jeremy Corbyn in the UK, he didn't necessarily overcompensate. He just didn't push back hard enough. What RFK has decided to do, and I don't even know if he's decided to do it, it sort of seems like it's been arranged for him, is to attach himself to some of the biggest fanatics and grifters and financial scammers of the Likudnik wing of the Israel lobby, and to make Israel and his support for Israel a centerpiece of this campaign, which was supposed to be a piece opposing censorship, fighting for free speech, and taking on big pharma and corporate, unregulated corporations. And now he's just caught up in this Israel thing as if that somehow will take away all these bad faith allegations about anti-Semitism from the Democrats. And I had to question, and I raised this question on Twitter, if some billionaire like Miriam Adelson, who has inherited the fortune of her late husband, Sheldon Adelson, is dumping money into pro-RFK super PACs to make this whole thing happen. So yesterday, RFK was on stage with Shmuley Boteach, this race hustling, fake rabbi, reality show rabbi, at an event to make the case for Israel. That was, by the way, the title of an Alan Dershowitz book. And Shmuley Boteach's entire career is paid for by the Adelson family. So it really raises some questions, and it's definitely a major blow in my eyes to RFK Jr.'s credibility. If you want to show a clip.
What do
you think about what's happening, Aaron? I mean,
look, on top of just basic morality, like he's defending an apartheid government in Israel, defending a government that's been occupying, brutalizing Palestinians for decades, and is still doing it every day.
So
politically,
we can stop here for a second. What are your thoughts in general about RFK? I don't think I've ever heard what your thoughts are on RFK Jr.
Well, as you know, I'm planning to vote for Cornel West next year for president.
Yeah, me too.
Nothing's going to stop me from voting for Cornel West. As far as the Democratic primaries, I like some of the things that Robert F. Kennedy says. I like some of the things that Marianne Williamson says. I mean, they both got some strong, good points about them, but they're both fighting inside the Democratic Party. Yeah. And so in that regard, I'll wish them luck, but I know what they did to Bernie Sanders. I know what they did to Tulsi Gabbard, and they're going to do to Robert Kennedy, and they're going to do to Marianne Williamson. And in fact, it's the most open about it by not having debates, for starters. But with Robert Kennedy, the COVID policies. I'm a moderate on the vaccine. I'm a moderate on the COVID response. Lockdowns were okay, maybe for about a month to see what the hell's going on, but it got very extreme. Wearing a mask, shouldn't have been mandatory. The vaccine should not have been mandatory. Well, it's not really mandatory, but they try to make it mandatory. And all that, I'm on RFK's side from a civil libertarian standpoint. I love what he has to say about free speech. I absolutely love what he has to say about free speech, abolishing the Espionage Act, freeing Julian Assange, that sort of thing. With the whole Israel thing, what happened went back to what happened with and by the way, thank you for playing that Gene Simmons video a while back. That was wonderful. I mean, I have newfound respect for Gene Simmons. I can forgive all his other political positions just making that video, because he didn't have a Ben Shapiro like response over Roger Waters criticizing Israel.
That was so unexpected for me. I was blown away. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, and and I'm not going to cancel somebody out for supporting Israel. I used to support Israel a long time ago, but the thing about it is, when they do things like try to abolish the Supreme Court or weaken the Supreme Court to the point where it's just meaningless and things, and they have the apartheid system, which when I finally realized that it was not just something that people were inventing, that was actually going on over there. I mean, it's like, it's not anti-Semitic to point this thing out.
Totally.
If Norway was doing this to other people, I was criticize Norway too for this.
Yeah. On the other side of this too, and I'm with you. I agree with everything you just said. I know a lot of Israelis, and I used to work with Israeli people, and I remember working with this woman, Gail, who she's like, you just don't know what it's like, Dustin. Like, you don't know what it's like to live in fear of being fucking shot or fucking, you have your house exploded or whatever. She's like, it's a whole different dynamic than it is living here. So you don't appreciate it. And I'm like, okay, I understand that. I think with Israel, it's hard for me because I understand, like, I always side with the oppressed, right? And I can see clearly that the Palestinians are being oppressed. But what's the answer? I don't know, and I also, like I said, I have experience with a lot of Israeli people who've told me their firsthand experience of things too. And with RFK, I think you're 100% on point, because it doesn't matter what I think of RFK. He's not going to be the Democratic nominee. They have a nominee. They have a president in place. You think they're going to do anything to risk that? Of course not.
Only if he steps down. If he steps down, then Gavin Newsom will probably fill in the shoes or something like that.
Yeah.
I
just recently found out, like a year or two ago, that Gavin Newsom and Nancy Pelosi are related. I didn't even know that.
Yeah, and I think that Gavin Newsom is also related to Ron DeSantis.
Is he?
By marriage. I think that his wife's,
that's weird.
Correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong, but I think that his wife's family is somewhat distantly related to Ron DeSantis.
This world is so crazy. Did you know? I mean, a lot of people know this, but did you know Barack Obama is like a distant cousin of Dick Cheney?
Wow. I mean, that's crazy. This is crazy,
Yeah.
But as I said, he's overly compensating for this Israel thing, and he's going to alienate people like Max Blumenthal and Kim Iverson and some of these other folks, because these people who support Robert Kennedy, they're either indifferent or they're a little bit hostile toward Israel and trying to suck into the Israeli lobby. They're going to just dismiss it. I mean, even Bernie Sanders, who is Jewish and could be, you could almost say he's still an old school labor Zionist who lived in the kibbutz in the 1960s. The Israeli lobby and hates his guts. So,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean, we were the Bernie campaign was called Nazis and stuff. Do you have a hard stop at 5, or can you go a little, like, how long do you have?
what do you mean?
Like, can you stay out? Like, do you have to leave at 5 after an hour, or can you stay for
No,
2 hours?
no. I'm pretty much free this evening.
Okay, awesome. I was planning on staying on maybe till 6, unless we get done with early. But so I think the next thing, let's watch this, because so just going back to RFK, I think, again, the thing I like about him is that he's elevating these kind of things for discussion. Like this Israel thing, I think, whether you agree or disagree with his position on it, 2 things. One, it's forcing us to talk about it. And then 2, I think that I don't know what the answer is with the Israel thing, but also I think that this is my take on it, and I like what Max said, because Max, like, is he doing this because some hard right Israel lobbies dumping money into him through a PAC? But also, to me, I'm like, he's saying so much other shit that's like beyond the pale when it comes to COVID and all that other stuff. To me, I'm like, if the Israel thing is the one area he has to kind of kiss ass a little bit to get over the finish line, I'm kind of like not that bothered by it. You know what I mean? Like, if that's the ring he has to kiss to get it, like, to gain political power, to, like, close down the FBI and, like, regulate big pharma better, okay, like, it's a means to an end. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, it's still somewhat politically suicidal to criticize Israel if you're high up in society.
Totally.
Political correctness, and yeah, from the shit libs, but also from certain sections of the right too, the evangelicals and the neocons. And the dirty little secret is that supporting Israel does not mean that you love Jewish people. I mean,
totally.
Evangelical Christians are an example of that. Not every evangelical Christian, but it's just something I have noticed among some of the really loud individuals in the Christian right who claims that they love the Jewish people, but when the ACLU comes there to their local community and they automatically assume it's a Jewish lawyer or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's why they hate the ACLU. They look at it as a Jewish organization.
Well, the other side of that is there's a lot of Israelis that disagree with their government. There are a lot of progressive Israelis who are like, this ain't cool. What's going on? Like, we're not cool with this. Just like
Jewish people. A lot of American Jewish people. I mean, it's
totally.
not.
I mean, Max Blumenthal.
Yeah, 30 years ago, maybe even some fairly left-wing Jewish Americans would have been upset issue, criticized Israel, but today it's not a thing. Even Abraham Foxman, who's kind of an establishment Democrat type, looking at the Israeli government, he used to call anybody who criticized Israel just a little bit, he used to call them anti-Semitic and be like very vicious about it. And now he's asking, I don't know if I can support this government anymore. It's so far to the right.
That's crazy. Well, let's watch. Bree really hits him with some good questions, and we don't have to watch all this. That's why I was asking if you have time, because it's like 10 minutes.
I got all the time in the world.
Okay, cool. But I think you're right too. Criticizing, just like Gene Simmons said, a criticism of Israel is not anti-Semitism, and the Semite peoples, our Arabs are Semitic people too. So anyway, but if RFK's got to use this as a shield from it, because I mean, when at that hearing, I'm like, the Democrats are trying to anti-Semite him already, and he's kind of got a shield against it. He's like, no, look, I'm super pro-Israel. And so I'm kind of like, you know what, is this suicidal, or is it kind of like some smart political maneuvering a little bit? Maybe I don't know.
I think in his case, he's really from the old school where it was kind of like a thing for people to be pro-Israel by proxy. It was just something. It's just something you were at one time, and it didn't have an ideological bent to it, or it was just something that everybody was for on the left, the right, and the center 35, 40, and 50 years ago.
You could argue it's that way now. I mean, there's very few people on the left who dissent against money to Israel. I would almost wager there's probably more in the Matt Gaetz MTG group that are to the left of the Democrats on that now. Maybe.
Well, the difference between left-wing anti-Zionism and right-wing anti-Zionism, and there are two separate schools of it. When leftists are against Israel and criticizes Israel, they're not anti-Jewish. 99.9% of them do not do it out of quote unquote hatred or anything. They're doing it because they see human right abuse being what it is. Now, when a right-wing person, when they're anti-Zionist, they're doing it because they hate Jewish people.
Are there examples that you can point to of that?
Well, I would say maybe white nationalist groups would fit into that category.
I just mean like in Congress.
Oh, not anything off the top of my head, but the closest thing in mainstream media that would have fit that mold would have been Pat Buchanan.
Yeah, I know who he is.
You can argue that he's just a paleoconservative, and so there's cause for plausible deniability, I guess, in his case.
Sure. Well, yeah. I'm just always skeptical of those claims because probably the only Republican I've ever supported was Ron Paul, and the way that they got rid of him was claims of white power, because he definitely had people in his circles who were racists. And there were people that donated to him, that gave him money, that were racist. But I thought Joe Biden's racist. There's people racist giving him money too, but that's a whole other thing. I think his response I liked too, because he's like, I'm going to do something positive with the money these people are giving me. I'm not a racist. Like you can't point to anything in that he said. He's not saying anything racist, but that's the political machine has a way of, tearing people down with claims like that. Like white nationalists, I think, is almost like one of those coded language things where you can call someone a racist that way without having to prove it. You know what I mean?
No, in Ron Paul's case, he's not. I don't think he's a racist. He's an old school paleocon and partly libertarian, and kind of fused those two movements together. And all he is, and when you combine that, he's just an old-fashioned isolationist, and I can respect that position. Isolationism. It's not quite the same as my dovish position on foreign policy, but I take that compared to the warmongering nature of the two-party system that we have currently.
Yeah, honestly, I don't see how America First, is a racist thing, even though they try to associate it. Maybe the KKK said something like that in the past or something. They try to associate it with that, but it's like, to me, that's what it should be. It should be like, hey, let's take care of each other and our fellow men here before anything else. Like, sure, if we need to help Israel a little bit, I'm fine with that. If we need to help Ukraine a little bit within reason, I'm fine with that. But like, priority should be right here,
Yeah. Now, American First Committee was founded in the late 1930s, and I think some people were just isolationists. Some people were American First for negative reasons.
Yeah.
And there was one prominent leftist who was in there, and it was out of his pacifist position, and that was Norman Thomas of the Socialist Party, the successor of Eugene Debs.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that's why I get, you could say that there's possible deniability for America First. It depends who's for it and in what context. The America First, for the sake of America First, is not necessarily anything that's negative. I'm a protectionist because I want American workers. American workers. Yeah, I want all workers around the world to be treated well, but I don't want to outsource to go and bring the standard of living down to the third world. I want the third world to come up to our standard of living and improve it, and everybody be like Scandinavia.
That's the thing that frustrates me so much about capitalism. And I worked for a guy a while back who said something so profound to me. This guy's a multimillionaire CEO guy. And it was during the financial crash of 2008. And let me get this off my chest before we watch this RFK clip. We were getting way off track, but I thought what he said was so profound because, and this company, they were such good people, the way that they operated. And so what he said was, when the financial crash was happening in 2008 and Bear Stearns was going under and stuff, I was sitting in a lunchroom with this guy, and he was like one of those CEOs who, would go sit with the people and like a real man of the people, came up from working class roots and everything. And older guy, we called him Jay-Z because that was his initials. And he goes, we're watching the news as things are going down. He goes, what they want us to do is unsustainable. He's like, you can't show growth quarter over quarter every quarter without cutting something or doing something illegal. Or he didn't say he's doing something illegal, but he said, he's like, it's just not sustainable to show growth to shareholders quarter over quarter. And we're killing ourselves by operating in this manner. You know what I mean? This company, this is how friggin' cool this company was. When the economy crashed, instead of doing layoffs, they cut unnecessary expenses. Like, I didn't even know this until the economy crash happened, but we had rented plants. We were like renting plants in our building. So they're like, we're not going to rent plants anymore. They cut that out of the budget. They were giving us free sodas. So they started making people pay $0.25 for the sodas in the break room. And they didn't lay anyone off at first because they were able to like cut just BS expenses. So anyway, it's like all this kind of stuff. I'm like way off track now.
I get that way. So don't worry about it. It's all good. It's what makes us interesting.
Yeah. We just kind of ride the conversation wherever it's going. But I think just to circle back to RFK, this Brianna Joy Gray always tends to ask the right questions. So let's just watch some pieces of this and talk about it.
Okay, I want to change gears a little bit and go back to something you said earlier, I think, in response to our first question, which is that you bristled at the accusations of anti-Semitism in part because you have the best record on Israel or the best position on Israel as compared to
other. Hold on. Let me just make absolutely sure. Okay. My bad.
Which is that what is considered broadly in American discourse and among the Democratic Party, frankly, among the two-party establishment, to be a good position on Israel is not the position that many people on the left take. So there was some frustration with respect to you walking back your support of Roger Waters, the kind of repeated choice to go to Rabbi Shmuley and more conservative members of the community when you are being criticized with these accusations of anti-Semitism. You've spoken about your, quote, unconditional support of Israel. And at a time when progressives were just kind of tacitly sanctioned in the House for saying, in agreement with the international community, that Israel is an apartheid state, when the Democratic House caucus is passing a resolution saying categorically it is not an apartheid state against what Amnesty International and all these other groups have said, that it's not a racist state, is that a kind of censorship as well that you're concerned about?
Such a good question.
Shouldn't elected Democrats, elected House members have the ability to criticize any nation state without it seeming like it's a violation that it needs to be responded to with this kind of a resolution, this kind of codified censorship?
Yeah, I mean, I think people ought to be able to criticize Israel, and I don't think it's anti-Semitic to criticize Israel.
There you go.
Here's the distinction.
But then he goes into this.
If you're criticizing Israel and not applying the same standards to neighboring states or other states, in other words, if you're making a special category to criticize Israel that's unique to Israel and letting all the other states do the worse, much worse, that then evinces a bias. And let me tell you why I think the moral case for Israel, and that which would take me hours to lay out. But Israel, if you want freedom, if you're, for example, a woman, you'd rather live in Israel than any of the neighboring countries. If you're gay, 2 weeks ago there was a gay pride parade in Israel, 150,000 people. At the same time, Iran was hanging gays from cherry pickers in the major cities.
So do you think, have you heard this too, Willie?
This is the first time I've seen this on Rising. And I was going to comment on both RFK and Brianna Joy Gray. I was going to say with Brianna Joy Gray first, she's right about, the way that he's going on about Israel is really going to alienate any potential strong left support that he's going to need for the movement to him to have the credibility. But the Hill itself, they basically canceled Culture Katie Halper, I believe sometime last year, over her position on Israel. She's Jewish herself.
Yeah.
And yeah,
I love Katie Halper. Katie's one of,
yeah, she's awesome, and she gets criticized and being called. And I don't think she hates herself. I mean, I don't know.
She's just not
yeah.
She's just an honest actor.
Mhm.
That's why she's so beloved. That's why I love her, because she's just someone who says the truth.
And regarding to this whole censorship thing and everything, because this is, I've been kind of conflicted on whether, I mean, now from a free speech standpoint, I've always supported the right of the BDS movement, but I was kind of on the fence whether to support it, because I'm against sanctions as a general rule against any country, whether it's Cuba or whether it's Iran or what have you, because it harms the people. And I don't want to harm innocent Israelis any more than I want to harm innocent Cubans and innocent Chinese people or whatever abroad. So there is that. But in light of what Israel's doing, trying to destroy what little bit of democracy was existing in the country with the Supreme Court, I'm going to have to be, I mean, I understand why BDS is doing what they're doing. Now, I'm with RFK in regard to that double standard. Israel deserves to be criticized, but so do other countries too in that region. Honestly, my position is there's not a country in that region that's committed to human rights. None of them. Not one country in that region.
That's so true.
Yeah.
And what he said about the gay pride parade thing, that's why I was like, I would like to verify that, is because I hear a lot of stories about Iran, like, oh, Iran's doing this and that. And I like, now more than ever, I'm like, is that bullshit State Department propaganda, or is that really happening? You know,
I think it's really happening, but I also think State Department propaganda too. They're trying. A friend of mine used the term pink diaper babies, or pink diaper, no, red diaper, pink diapers or something like that. Basically trying to use progressive wedge issues in the culture war to kind of turn people, the young generation into the new breed of neocons, essentially. And it seems like it's been effective. Now, what Robert Kennedy said about the gay pride parades and all that, and is it safer to be LGBTQ in Israel than any other country in that region? I would say yes, obviously.
Sure it is.
But they're still behind on that question. They don't have the same-sex marriage legal. What the hell is that about? And you're having pretty much all of Western Europe and a lot of Latin America and the United States and Canada that legalized that issue.
If I was RFK's, just to interject this real quick, if I was RFK's campaign manager, I would say, listen, Robert, whenever anyone asks you about Israel, this is your line. I love Israel. I think the U.S. should have the same health care they do.
Okay, that was my next point, is that a lot of leftists not going to like what I'm going to say, but Israel was actually founded by socialists and communists, and they wanted it. Zionism was mostly on the left initially. And because they were doing sketchy things after the country was created. And there's a lot of questions on how, there was a lot, the Zionist movement was very split, between the labor Zionists, which were like socialists and communists, and the revision Zionists, which, today they're the Likud party, and the socialist Zionists is almost no longer a thing, but they exist within the Labor Party in Israel, or Meretz, and Hadash, which is a communist party, in those movements. But do not support, they do not support the human right abuse to the level of Likud, and they could be better on those issues themselves. But there is also that. But the country has gone so far to the right that it's just. It's an apartheid state today. It went from a socialist state to an apartheid state.
Yeah, we need to. It's like the United States. I mean, the United States, Richard Nixon was more progressive than Barack Obama or Joe Biden. which is crazy.
Margaret Thatcher, who is the worst prime minister Great Britain ever had, is more progressive on healthcare than Joe Biden today.
Like you said with Reagan, I mean, you think about it, it's like the marketing is so good. Like what you were saying about younger people being dragged to the right. I think that's where Obama is where like marketing peaked, because Obama like sold, and I was guilty of it. Like the Obama being president sold me on like, well, we're doing the right thing in the Middle East. Like, you know, it was like a good, like, oh yeah, it's cool to be. He called Afghanistan the just war. You know, like he kept all that stuff going and quietly escalated it while we all cheered and patted ourselves on the back for electing a black president. You know, and I don't think he was a terrible president. I can point to a lot of stuff he did that I think was good, specifically pardoning Chelsea Manning.
Yes.
But you know, there's still like Barack Obama was Black Reagan. Like he said himself, I have the policies of a Reagan, basically.
Yeah, he bragged about it. He bragged that he would have been pretty much a moderate Reagan Republican in the 1980s,
Yep.
and it was very true. He would have been.
Totally.
Yeah, totally have been. And Reagan has been rehabilitated by the Democrats, by the way. I've noticed that
about
Bush. Democrats rehabilitate past Republican presidents. They may go jump up and down and have a tantrum of what assholes they are while they're being president. Give about 15, 20 years or so, then they get rehabilitated. I predict that if Ron DeSantis becomes president, that Donald Trump will be rehabilitated.
I mean, you've seen that meme that has Michelle Obama hugging George Bush, and someone just like photoshopped Trump's head on it, and it says liberals in 2030.
Yep, I created one myself. It's that particular one with Trump being hugged by Michelle Obama, but instead of Michelle Obama, I superimposed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez's head in there.
Oh, that's perfect, because let's segue into our next clip. Remember this?
I can send that to you, by the way, if you like.
Oh yeah, send it. Remember this.
The Democratic Party does not do more unless it is pushed. So we need to push them, and they don't like it. I think I annoy them, but that is our job. That's our job.
Adorable.
I got another one. Hold on, here we go. Oh, where's my stupid whoops. I got Butterfingers on the Zoom today.
That's all right. I'll tell you one thing. She is the most adorable sellout ever.
Oh, here it is. Is this? Wait. Yeah, here we go.
The Bronx and Queens needs is Medicare for all. We can do it now. It takes political courage.
Start bringing the ruckus on the Democratic Party. That is our job.
Gosh, from dirtbag leftists to shitlib, how the mighty have fallen. AOC.
So I wanted to just refresh our memories with that before we talk about this clip of Lee Camp. So listen to this. This is actually, and let me just, okay. I just want to make sure the sound's selected, because I always do that shit where I forget to select the sound and then you can't hear the clip. So this is basically, there was a recent article, I'm sure a lot of people have read it, about how it's like kind of now accepted that AOC is a standard Democrat, and Lee Camp's going to talk about it.
Called Squad, AOC are not actually standing up for the things that some people thought they would. This is from New York Magazine. This is not a small publication, you know. This is not my show. This is New York Magazine. This is AOC is just a regular old Democrat now. They are letting you know. And they make some great points in it. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez recent appearances on Pod Save America podcast, which, for those who don't know, that is a podcast that is completely run and operated and hosted by Obama staffers. So You can imagine she's
Yes.
being invited on there. What exactly does she stand for?
That's why the name is so pretentious. We're
Yeah.
gonna.
I was just going to say, Pod Save America is probably the part of the quote unquote online left that's even more to the right of TYT.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They're Obama staffers.
Yeah.
For now, but it's beyond just being invited on there. On Pod Save America, the author is saying her appearance had for me the feeling of a final disappointment, the kind that's a little sad but brings a set of quixotic hopes to a close. AOC appeared on the popular Crooked Media show to announce her endorsement of Joe Biden for president of the 2024 election. Because AOC, who was supposedly outside of the Republican Party, that was the idea, right? She's standing
Democratic
on the
Party.
outside, banging on the window, saying, we are the real people. We are the real left, and we want in there. She was supposedly that when she first showed up. And here she is endorsing Joe Biden like a fucking year and a half before the election. She just wanted to get in early with that endorsement. She wanted to make sure people knew early that she was with the establishment. To deliver that particular endorsement while appearing on that particular podcast was to send a very deliberate message. It was AOC's last kiss-off to the radicals who had supported her, voted for her, donated to her campaign, and made her unusually famous in American politics. The beneficiary of a wholly unique cult of personality that is now starting to come undone. And let me just reiterate, this is mainstream media. This is not some crazy lefty blog.
Oh, wow.
In 2021 interview with the publication Democratic Socialists of America, Ocasio-Cortez attacked left critics of the Biden administration on identitarian grounds. She said, quote, "We really have to ask ourselves, what is the message that you are sending to your black and brown and undocumented members of your community, to your friends, when you say nothing has changed?" Yeah, well, AOC, what's the message you're sending when you say that something has changed? What is the message that you're sending to black and brown and indigenous and every other person that is persecuted in this country under the Biden administration, under the fucking laws and ideas that Joe Biden has fought for his entire life? What kind of message are you sending when you say, yeah, that's real change? Putting the guy who wrote the laws that have doubled the prison population, that have put more black men in prison than there were slaves during slavery times. What is it to say that guy is real change? What is that?
I mean, he's making great points.
He's hitting the nail on the head. And, you know, I felt like I was the crazy man in the room, maybe even last year when I was getting very fed up and exasperated with AOC and all that. I mean, because I remember 2 years ago when I was starting to get a little fed up with her. But, you know, I still supported her reluctantly, you know, critical support. You know, anybody who gets excited by AOC in the year 2020 needs to have their freaking heads examined, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, and you know, to her credit, Shama Sawant, who's also a member of DSA, called for the expulsion of the squad from DSA for their for busting a rail strike.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God. See, that's what I was saying with the whole WGA and Writers Guild, or the Writers Guild and the SAG after strike, is like, hey people, can you see now, like, all you shit libs in Hollywood that voted for Biden, like they crushed a rail strike at the end of last year. They literally stopped it with the law.
Yeah, they did. And I mean, what socialists, you know, I can, even though I know we're going to talk about force to vote, but even though I was angry that they rejected force to vote, because
let's talk about it now.
Oh, okay, we'll talk about it now. Even though they didn't do force to vote, you know, one can make an argument. Well, okay, she says she's keeping her powder dry for something that's a little more obtainable. I don't agree with it, but I can see why they would say that. You know, if they would have pulled through, but they never, ever, if I could use some foul language, they never, ever use the goddamn force of vote on anything. But corporate Democrats like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema did to destroy Build Back Better. And on the Republican crazy side, Matt Gaetz squeezed concessions out of
exactly the
Kevin
conservatives, those conservatives. So that's the thing, though. I think when you watch that video of her saying we need to bring the ruckus on the Democratic Party, it's really tough to excuse her for playing soft with Force the Vote. It's really tough. I think like that's why I love Jimmy Dore so much, because it's like that was him. Like he Force the Vote was Jimmy Dore. You can say like other people pushed it, maybe someone, he was really the one who got behind it and made it a thing and made it like put it on the table and made it a conversation point. And I think that's the point when I dumped AOC, because I had donated money to her. Like I saw her speak at a Bernie rally in Venice. Like I was a huge AOC stan. I defended her for so long. I had conservative friends when she first got in that were like, AOC's a fucking actor, bro. She is a fucking actor. And and now I'm like, holy shit, you guys were right. She is. She's a fucking complete fake.
Depends on which right wingers you talk to. Some of them will see right through her that she's a grifter and an actress, and then there's another camp that she's the reincarnation of Mao Zedong or Kim Jong Il.
Yeah, those are that's stupid. That's just dumb.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I like one of the things I like about RFK is that he's bringing right and left together on a lot of stuff, which is great. And there are just as many. There are some really dumb takes on the right. You probably saw the other day. I'm like, there's a bunch of libertarian women who I follow who are like super gun loving people, like that, but they're like pro-life, like anti-abortion. And I'm just like, yo, you support the death penalty and like no laws or regulations for guns, but you're pro-life. Explain that to me. That doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, if you support the death penalty, if you're like, I'm pro-life and I support the death penalty, like you're just admitting that you believe conflicting things. I don't know how you do that.
Yeah, if you claim to be pro-life, and there's something wrong with that terminology, but pro-life should mean I support Medicare for all. It should mean I
support life.
Yeah.
Not just fetuses.
Oppose torture in Guantanamo Bay.
Right.
Oppose drone striking or boots on grounds in other countries, invading other countries. To me, that's what. But for a lot of those folks on that side, and that wouldn't necessarily be libertarians, but maybe your Sean Hannity style Republicans who yell that they're pro-life, but they're pro-war and and all of that. And even with the Ukraine-Russian conflict, while many on the right are correct on the Russian-Ukraine conflict, there's some of them who are still the same old neocons on the issue of Taiwan, which, I don't want China to go and invade. And, and I mean, but the point is that if they did invade, I don't think the U.S. should respond either, because I don't want World War III to be started over Taiwan any more than I would the Ukraine.
That's the one thing I think I liked Trump on, where it's like, he said flat out, he's like, why can't we be friends with Russia? Like, why can't we? What's wrong with being friends with Russia? What? And it was these neocons who were left over from the Clinton State Department in the Obama era. I think when you really dive deeply into what happened near the end of the Obama administration, holy crap, I helped my son do this thing. And I learned, did you know that after the 2016 election, they put the election supervision under DHS? Like DHS now controls elections after 2016. Like DHS over. Did you know that?
No, I know now.
Yeah, it's like literally Obama put that in on his way out. That guy, Jay Johnson, Obama's like DHS head, put that in on his way out of office. Like, and like the more you read into this stuff, and then there was this whole story about, so under Obama, they repealed the Smith-Mundt Act, which was the act that basically said that the CIA can't use propaganda on American citizens. And so this whole new, and I mean, honestly, the government has always used propaganda on citizens, but it's been ramped up to the nth degree in the last few years because of these laws. There's this thing, and if you don't know about this, definitely check it out. But the USAGM, the U.S. Agency for Global Media, they subsidize corporate news in different ways through different cutouts, and it's basically the biggest media company in the world, and it's run by the US government. You know what I mean? And it encompasses things like Voice of America, and it all started with, you know, the stuff that we do abroad to propagandize other countries. But under Obama, that stuff was brought in-house. And it's so crazy, Willie, that I was reading these articles after Trump got elected where the Democrats were panicking because they built this propaganda arm and Trump won. I just smacked my mic. I literally have, I'll have to dig it up, but I have this article where they're like, Trump, like it's literally like a Politico article where they're like, oh my God, like the headline is like, Trump inherits propaganda, you know, giant propaganda arm or something. And there's like people from the Hillary Clinton campaign in the article like, yeah, we had a meeting with the US AGM scheduled and we had to cancel it because Trump won. And now they're like, this is really dangerous that he has access to all this stuff. And then come to find out, I found this other thing where this woman, Jennifer Greigel, her name is, she's actually a professor. I can't remember what college she's at, but she did this report under Trump where she caught the government using Facebook to propagandize people under Trump. And supposedly they were running pro-Russia propaganda or whatever on behalf of the Trump administration, but they caught him. So I can only imagine what they've been, you know, the Twitter files exposed that shit anyway, but I got off track again. But that shit's crazy. Like when you go down that wormhole of like how bad it's gotten with how controlled media is in the world at large, not just in the US, you know?
Yeah, that's why they try to suppress. I think that's part of the reason why Google, who owns YouTube, is cracking down on independent content makers too.
Yeah,
because most makers are. This was the one area where I think that that the left started to raise an awareness among the people, because who else I was talking to about this the other day? Was it Jimmy this past week, or was it somebody else, or was it Angel a couple of weeks ago?
I think you did talk to Jimmy about some of that stuff. I watched your show with her too.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. We were talking about that. That basically that, you know, they want to crack down. Oh yeah. Prior to the Young Turks, when they were a decent outfit coming on YouTube in 2005, that was, I would say, that was the beginning. And yeah, I didn't know it at the time because I didn't know what the hell the Young Turks were. I didn't even know they existed until 2008. But yeah, when they started to increase in audience back then. Prior to that, what controlled the narrative is the Fox News, right-wing talk radio, TV evangelicals with a right-wing partisan Republican message, and what passed for liberal opposition in the media were corporate Democrats who stood for nothing. And by the time YouTube came along and the Young Turks, and then the Majority Reports, the Amazing Atheists, all these folks come along, you know, Kyle Kalinske, Jimmy Dore, all of them, by the year 2016, I mean, the left they were ready to take on the right in ways that they were not able to, you know, 15 years earlier.
I mean, so it's crazy that you say that, because I feel, well, first of all, me and you are old. That's one of the things that, not that we're old, but we've seen a lot.
We're older.
Yeah. So I think that's one of the reasons we're a little wiser, and we can maybe share a little bit with some of the younger cats and just say, look, like, we've been to these rodeos a few times ourselves. And so this is what you kids got to watch out for. You know, they're going to, you know, jerk you around. And you got to be, it's funny because I'll tell this quick story. I thought about this today. I used to run a meme page on Facebook, and it was called Militant Leftist Memes for Conservatives Who Love America. And I have a cousin who graduated from University of New Mexico with a political science degree. And one of her close friends, who I know pretty well, but I'm not like super close with, but I've, like, you know, I've met her, I've hung out with her a couple times, works for the DNC. And when this was a few years ago, when Trump was still president, I think. And I was a Bernie guy to the core. She was a Bernie fan, but before she got into the DNC, she worked for Pete Buttigieg. First, she worked for Bernie, and then the Pete Buttigieg people hired her away from Bernie. And so like the Democratic Party, like, really infiltrated the progressive movement and took a lot of the people out of it. But this woman, straight up, my cousin told me that her friend was like, her friend was asked about how she knew me on Facebook. And that's the only way we're connected, like through Instagram and Facebook. And she said that they told her I was an extremist. And I'm like, what? I'm an extremist? My only extreme view is that I believe that people should not have to die for lack of health insurance. If that's being an extremist, then fuck yeah, I'm an extremist, because I think human life is more important than money in any situation. I don't care. There's no monetary value that's more important than a human life, in my opinion.
The Overton window is so far to the right in the United States that it doesn't take a lot to be considered a far leftist. Even if AOC and Bernie Sanders, in their better time period of 5-6 years ago, for all intents and purposes, most Americans just thought they were wanting to turn the United States into Cambodia or something like that. It would be the hyperbole would be, Cambodia under Pol Pot. The hyperbole would be to that level.
Yeah.
And it's just crazy. I know. You were talking about people, I have a friend that lives in Montana, and when he was going to Montana State University, I believe it was in Missoula, Jim Messina, that's his name, who ended up working in the Obama administration under Rahm Emanuel.
Okay,
and
I've heard that.
He ended up working with Boris Johnson in the UK to put a stop to Jeremy Corbyn winning. And I'm just sharing a story because when I was in the College Democrats at East Carolina, one of my fellow members who I used to be friends with, past tense, became sadly an extreme right-wing, kind of a fairly well-known right-wing figure in this country.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, well, I'm not going to say he's a household name, but if anti-immigration is what gets your rocks off, you would know the name. And his name is William Geen from a group called Alley Pack. If you ever see that person, he used to be a liberal. He used to be a progressive. I was good friends with that guy. He just went nuts into the far, far right. I
wonder what happens to people like that. I mean, I said in a show the other day, I haven't changed. Like since the 80s, I've been the same person. The Democratic Party has gone further and further and further right.
Yes, they have. I'm less of a shitlib than I used to be. I mean, I may.
That's true. That's true. I think I've definitely probably gone left, because I realize now that I was duped in the Obama years. Because I think the thing about Obama that I realized looking back is it's like a lot of the criticism of him was easy to label as racism, because so many of the right-wing critics of Obama didn't have those criticisms of George Bush and Dick Cheney, so it was easy to go, oh, well, you're just a racist then, like you're mad. And it was such a good shell game for the neocons to play, to just jump to the left and go, okay, let's keep doing the wars, but now we're cool with gay people and minority groups, but let's just keep doing the wars, and now we're just going to be drape it in a rainbow flag and put a black guy at the front of it, and then it's cool. Okay.
Yeah, it's really interesting when you talk to some Republicans about and what they think a neocon is and what they actually are two different things, because they think that a neocon is a soft-spoken moderate Republican who's pleasant to liberals, even though they may agree with the hardcore Republicans on all the major issues. I'm like, no. I mean, yeah, many do feel that, like the architect of the Iraq War, Bill Kristol does fill in those gaps in that regard. But there are neocons out there who, she's not a neocon, but there are neocons who have the politics of Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Yeah.
Out there. So, I mean, they range from Marjorie Taylor Greene to Bill Kristol. Now, the Bill Kristol types, went back to, some of them went back to the Democratic Party because Orange Man was so hideous to them and so offensive to them. And they'll come back to the Republican Party if DeSantis or some other normie who's to the right of Trump gets the nomination.
Well, so this is the thing that I think is interesting about this, and I see it differently now because I feel like a lot of the right people I viewed as like far right, or like my cousin, I'll give my cousin's husband as an example, who was a Trump voter. Like now I kind of see how he was actually trying to buck the uniparty. To your point about neocons, like their definition of a neocon is someone who's like more in step with the liberals, like a centrist kind of to them. But then when I talk to them, it's like, no, like we're both like, we agree on all this stuff. Those are like the uniparty people. And I was thinking about it today because I'm like, it's so fucked up what's happening right now because there's such a huge backlash against the Democrats because of all this stupid shit that they're doing. I really feel like the neocons moved into the Democratic Party to like nosedive it into the ground so they could move the country even further right. Now everyone's like, a lot of people like in the middle are like, well, I guess I'm going to vote for the Republicans now. You know what I mean? That are trapped in this. People that aren't like you and me are like, fuck this. We're going to vote for Cornel West,
Right. Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that a lot of them are going to go back. I mean, like I really think that Liz Cheney has a better chance of being the Democratic nominee for president than AOC.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
It's so true. The Democrats, again, they will lose. I guarantee you, if RFK or someone like does like to the left of Biden somehow manages to skimp their way into the Democratic seat, the Democrats would much rather that person loses, someone to the left of Biden, because not only then they can fundraise with the threat of Trump against the threat of Trump, as they, you know what I mean? It's like it's a no lose thing for them because and the donor class is going to get the same thing no matter what.
Yeah, Nancy Pelosi and excuse me, not Nancy, the snake from Massachusetts, Elizabeth Warren, when she tackled, I am angry. Remember that?
Yes.
She did.
One of my favorite things to do right now is go back and look at all the articles that were like, Bernie bros are mean online. Bernie bros are mean online. Oh, we must censor people because Bernie bros put a snake emoji in their tweet at Elizabeth Warren.
Every time her name comes up in a chat line, a damn snake emoji will come up. But anyway, people like her are not that upset that Roe versus Wade was overturned. This is an opportunity to go and fundraise for the Democratic Party. We're going to rescue you from those mean Republicans that took your choice away from you. We don't have to talk about Medicare for all or unions anymore.
Or the fact that we didn't protect it.
Right. And they never codified the abortion pro-choice, the abortion reproductive rights laws under Obama, like he promised. But I think that they were compelled to do that with the Respect for Marriage Act, because if they didn't, a lot of folks would have no reason. They realized a lot of people would not have any reason to vote for the vote for the Democrats in that regard.
Yeah.
And honestly, the Respect for Marriage Act is a very good piece of legislation. I'm going to give some Republicans credit for it. Some of the moderate Republicans made that law even better than how it was originally proposed. I support LGBTQ rights 100%, but you got to have some measures to not force churches that don't believe in it to embrace it. I'm a civil libertarian in that regard. If your church, if you're gay and your church don't like it, there's plenty of churches you can go to in that regard. Yeah,
California is very liberal when it comes to that kind of stuff. So I feel like, community, like I like Russell Brand because he talks a lot about communities and decentralization. And it's like different communities have different ideals and they live different ways. And that's fine. That's what that diversity, I think, is what makes the country great.
Well, there was Vosh was really shocked. And I talked to my friend who's a gay minister in Montana, I just mentioned earlier, and talked about Vosh being really shocked that the that the Mormons endorsed the Respect for Marriage Act, and I was just like, whoa, that's kind of cool. And I didn't see that coming, and I'm not Mormon bashing, but I know they're going to be genuinely socially conservative. So it was kind of encouraging to see them support that piece of legislation. And he's told me that there's more progressive elements within the Latter-day Saints than people give them credit for.
Yeah, it's funny. I grew up in Utah, so I know that very well. And what was crazy to me is I came out to California in like at the end of the 90s, basically. So I've been in California most of my life. And I went to first grade in Long Beach. I was kind of back and forth. I spent some of my childhood in Southern California too. But when I came out here, the Mormons actually they did this thing called Prop 8 out here, where they were trying to stop gay marriage, and the Mormons supported it. I don't remember the nuance of it. Maybe they supported people voting against it, but it got, whatever the case, like the Mormons put money into getting gay marriage defeated in California, and it pissed me off. But then they came around after that. I think that the Mormon church, this is what's interesting about the Mormon church as someone who grew up in Utah, and I think this is actually smart. They have modern day prophets. So their church has the ability to evolve. Like when things like they didn't allow black people, like they taught that, like they had some weird views about black people until the 70s. And then their prophet had a vision that they needed to change, and they updated their doctrine. They're like, no, black people are totally cool. Like you can be Mormons too. You know what I mean? It's like, and so I think they did that with gay people too. They're like, okay, our prophet, since it's not cool for us to exclude gay people anymore, our prophet had a vision that gay people are cool, and now we're gonna support LGBTQ rights.
Yeah, and I correspond online with a conservative Mormon who's actually okay to talk to. I mean, you can have conversation with him. I mean, he's
Mormons,
reasonable. Yeah,
the Mormons are very good people.
And online years ago, when people would attack him for being Mormon, I mean, I'll be like, come on, people, don't do that. I mean, that's not cool,
Yeah, you know what? I used to be, I grew up, because of how I grew up, my mother is Southern Baptist, and I grew up kind of like at odds with the Mormons. Even though my dad's side of the family was Mormon, I was one of those kids who kind of like, I was kind of an outcast because I wasn't a Mormon, but I was proud of that, and it's a weird culture, man. I got to say, like a lot of my friends, I just found out this past weekend, that a girl who I wasn't super close with, she was my friend's little sister, but she just killed herself. She just took her own life. And I need both my hands to count all of the peers I went to high school with who killed themselves, because they're so torn between that culture. It's like a very Pleasantville. Have you ever seen the Book of Mormon play?
No, I haven't.
Oh my God. There's a song in there called, it's so brilliant. It's like one of the most brilliant things ever, but there's a song in there called Turn It Off. And it's about how it's like the missionary guy in it, the character in there is struggling with being gay. And the Mormons are like very good at like bottling up their feelings if they're bad. And so I think that is so accurate. And I went through this so much with so many of my friends who had lifestyles that the church disagreed with, and they struggled internally with it, and it eventually drove them to suicide,
Yeah. It's just, I mean, as I said, it's just, it's sad. It comes in all quarters and everything in our society. So it just comes with the territory and everything and all. So
I've always been one of those people. Like I grew up listening to like all this really like abrasive hardcore music that was like really angry, and it was always like, depression is anger turned inwards, turn it outwards.
Yeah. Yeah, people thought there were people that thought I was going to kill myself for listening to too many Cure albums or something.
Oh, I love the Cure.
I mean, as I listen, we talked about it the last time. I listened to a lot of dark wave post punk music from the 70s or in the 80s and all that, and it's still part of who am I. I mean, I got an eclectic taste in music, but that's mostly what I listen to.
That's your core.
Everybody has a core of what they listen to, and then they can branch off. They're totally. Like you was talking about, what's his name, the country singer, the Trident.
Jason Aldean.
Yeah, like you said the other day, was it yesterday or a day before yesterday? You said something along the lines of, you're not into country music, modern country. Same here. I can listen to a Johnny Cash record,
Yeah.
or Patsy Cline or something like that.
Mhm.
The way country music is today, with this whole thing, not against people dressing up in a cowboy hat and all that, but
Yeah.
gonna get my pickup truck and and all that, and it's so hokey. It's just like,
Yeah. Then you have an artist like, have you ever heard of Casey Musgraves?
I can't think right off the moment if I have.
She's fucking brilliant. She's brilliant. She's a brilliant songwriter, just like country songwriter. She has a song called "Follow Your Arrow." I think that one, like, it's kind of like a pro gay song. Like, just it's called like, it's just be who you want, be yourself. Basically, is the message of the song. But she has like so much great stuff. And like that's a country artist I love. But like a lot of this stuff, I'm just like,
I just can't. I can't deal with it. And for those that do, I'm not going to. Now, I like what you said about people, the liberals clutching their pearls over the song.
Yeah.
I didn't even know about the song until it was been brought up to my attention all over the internet in the past week. And I'm like, yeah, okay. Now I know who this I didn't even know who Jason Aldean, who he was, and I still don't care to know who he is. I mean,
he doesn't seem like a bad guy.
Yeah, I don't care what the song's about. If you don't like the song, don't listen to it.
Yeah, that's what Roseanne, like the way that I found out about the song was Roseanne's tweet, because I follow Roseanne on Twitter, and she was responding to some lady who was freaking out about it. And Roseanne made the greatest point, which was just like, you guys sound like the people in the 80s who were like clutching their pearls over Satan in heavy metal, like playing their heavy metal records backwards and shit. Like, you sound like the people you used to hate now.
It is true. I mean, I went through a brief time period around 2016, 2017, wondering, I could never be a right-wing Republican, but I was wondering, could I be a leftist if all they're going to do is silence people, and all of that. And so, but I was thinking, no, there are a lot of free speech leftists out there, don't allow Glenn Beck and these people to sit there. You're on the car all the time, and I would be listening to online. Well, I'll listen to right-wing talk radio in the car just to get her up talking points, and they'll say the same thing over and over and over and beat it down to the point where you almost begin to believe it. And I don't now. I mean, I realize, that it is. I knew it was bullshit, and then eventually, but you listen to it long enough, and you're just kind of like. But these people they act like they were the open-minded people against those pearl-clutching liberals. But a lot of the right-wing people who are anti-SJW back then are now doing their own version of it again, getting mad over a Black Mermaid, for example, or getting mad over Dylan Mulvaney selling Bud Light. Who cares?
Like, just you're making it. See, and sometimes I think, because I worked in marketing, sometimes I think that these controversies are manufactured unintentionally. Like the Dave Chappelle Netflix thing, with trans people. I'm like, when you see like who the people protesting are, I'm like, really? I don't know. Is this real, or did they, pay someone to like be upset about it on Twitter so they could like manufacture this like outrage over it? Because it just makes it. Like I recently read P.T. Barnum's biography, and there's a whole that guy used the press, and he had a quote that was like, there's no such thing as bad press, basically.
And Donald Trump believed that in 2016, and he used it to his advantage.
Trump, I couldn't tell. I was like, is this the media doing this, or is Trump just a genius? Because from the day he announced his presidency, that guy was the top story every single day through his presidency, and still is like one of the top stories every day. Not every day, but most of the time, a lot of the time, still.
Well, here's the thing about Hillary Clinton. Not only did she invent the birther conspiracy theory, she and her husband convinced Donald Trump to run in 2016.
Oh my God. I made this meme a while back, because you know the picture of them at I think it's at Donald Trump's wedding to Melania with the Clintons.
Yes.
I took a shot that just had like Hillary and Donald's face together in it, and I went like I took a MSNBC Decision 2016 graphic, and I just plugged that in the middle. I was like, here's your choices. These two
Exactly.
in the same.
And there's another picture with Bill Clinton, Michael Bloomberg, Rudy Giuliani, and Donald Trump all playing golf together, you know? And I just kind of like, it's all like, are you familiar with Harlan's Media from Chicago?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. It's like what Kit Cabela says is he's quoting the gosh, what's the name of that comedian? He's no longer alive. The one that said
Carlin
is George Carlin. He's it's one big club and none of us are in it.
Totally.
Yeah.
So it's funny because so on this note, watching your stream the other day where you were talking about Jimmy Dore, so one of the things I've always done is I've always gone, okay, maybe Trump deserved the Russiagate stuff because of the birtherism thing. Because when Obama was president, Trump was one of the loudest people, like, show the birth certificate. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And you pointed out what I'm about to share right here, that Hillary Clinton was the one who started the birtherism shit. And people forget this. And I was so glad. I was like, holy shit, Willy just pointed out that I was like way wrong about this, because I was always kind of like, you know what, Trump kind of deserves it because he fucking did the birtherism shit to Obama, but it was really Hillary. So this article, like, you're not going to believe this. I actually read this whole thing. And so I wanted to like read some of it on stream, but there's just to get to this one point. So this was a point when in the 2016 campaign, I think the date's on the date of it was on that other slide, but it's 9/19/2016. So like right before the 2016 election. So this says Hillary Clinton had a tough week from collapsing. This was when she collapsed during the campaign. And the Democratic darling is steering her campaign into an iceberg. Put simply, she's losing. So this is September of 2016. On Friday, Hillary hit rock bottom. In order to turn the tide in the final weeks of the campaign, she resurrected an issue that had long disappeared from the 2016 campaign, birtherism. It was a move that will prove to be her Waterloo. This is so crazy. This is so crazy that I found this article. So it's like, so she's like, for 5 years, Republican nominee Donald Trump has led the birther movement to delegitimize our first Black president, Hillary said. His campaign was founded on this outrageous lie. The birther movement, of which Hillary speaks, dealt with the issue of whether President Barack Obama was born in the United States. Because the president failed to release his birth certificate when asked, some began to question what the president was hiding. After Trump brought the issue to the forefront, Obama finally released a birth certificate showing he was born in the United States. To Hillary, though, Trump's attachment to the birther movement was much more nefarious. In fact, it was racist. So, okay, here's the next slide here. Wait, this is part 2. He's feeding into the worst impulses, the bigotry and bias that lurks in our country, the Democratic presidential nominee proclaimed. Barack Obama was born in America, plain and simple, and Donald Trump owes him and the American people an apology. Hillary's motivations were clear. She flunked the president flunked her first pseudo debate with Trump on NBC's Commander-in-Chief forum earlier this month, placed herself in hot water when she declared half of Trump's supporters were a basket of deplorables. I forgot about that. And further sowed seeds of mistrust when she lied about her health. She had to change the narrative. Hold out baits to entice the enemy, wrote Sun Tzu. So this is the author comparing this to Hillary, by baiting Trump with the birther controversy, was hoping the outspoken candidate would respond in a manner that was undisciplined and unpresidential. She was hoping Trump would be Trump. It was a gamble that she lost. President Barack Obama was born in the United States, period, Trump said in response. Now we all want to get back to making America strong and great again. Trump's response, short and simple, showed a candidate who was not only more disciplined, but a candidate who understood he was in the lead. It showed a candidate that was willing to shrug off a desperate tactic in order to stay on a script that has brought Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, and Colorado back in play. Isn't that crazy?
Yes, it is. It is. Yeah, speaking of North Carolina, I lost a lot of friends in 2016 for my vote for Jill Stein.
I mean, this idea that you were going to vote for Hillary and that Trump or that Jill Stein gave the election to Trump is so fucking ridiculous.
Yeah, and that's what they do all the time. So, yeah, and they're going to do that with Cornel West and everything. But getting back to Hillary, anything that comes out of Hillary Clinton, and I was noticing that photo from the Hill. It's like if you're trying to look for, and this is what I do when I do a video on Hillary Clinton. It's like I try to find an unflattering picture of her, but it's so easy to find. You just gotta find which one is more unflattering, because every photo of hers is just, she has that frown, she has that evil look, just like, oh, good Lord, that's so funny.
You said something too about the vast right-wing conspiracy, and I always kind of felt like, though they did the Clintons dirty back in the day, the Republicans did the Clintons dirty. Like, you can see, I remember these, that's like true. The tabloids were like alien baby, like Hillary, like all kinds of crazy, ridiculous things about the Clintons back in the day. And maybe some of it had shreds of truth to it, whatever. But the way that the Clintons this was all intentional. Like they worked it. They own Hollywood. They own Silicon Valley. In the years after Bill Clinton's presidency, they became the vast right-wing conspiracy for sure.
Yeah. They engaged in it themselves. I mean,
totally. They flipped it on its head. They became it. They're like, yo, their snapback to it was to become it.
Exactly. Yeah, and I was defending Hillary Clinton not because defending Bill Clinton not out of love, but because I view the right wing, the Ken Starrs and all of them. I was like, they were trying to bring them down because they accused Democrats of being sore losers about elections, but the Republicans are still sore losers. Not only 2020 is not the first election they stomped their feet about. They were angry with 1992. How dare somebody, take the presidency away from a Republican? And I think this is where it really started to this day. Now, one of my friends said it started around 9/11. I said it started in the 1992 election because the culture war got really hot and heavy. Yeah, Reagan got elected in 80 and it got reelected in 88 and everything. But the culture war started to get obnoxious on all sides in the 1990s.
Yeah. Well, so the first election that I remember voting in was Bush and Gore. And I voted for Gore, of course, but
mine was Dukakis and Bush, and I voted for Dukakis. And to this day, some people make fun of me.
I remember Dukakis. Yeah, again, so this is the thing, going back to the censorship thing, this right here is why they want to tamp down social media, because the media used to be kingmakers. They Dukakis, like what they did to Dukakis, they did the same shit to Howard Dean. They're trying to do it now to RFK. You know what I mean? Like they were always the kingmakers, the media. I remember I was tiny. I didn't even vote in that election, but I clearly remember what they did to Dukakis. This is crazy. Going back to the Mormon thing, my grandmother, I realize as an adult now what a huge influence I joke about it, but my grandmother was a huge influence on me, and she was a Mormon. She sang in the Mormon Tabernacle Choir, but she was a progressive Mormon. She worked in a mental hospital, and her sister was basically like ran with gay people in Salt Lake City in the 1980s. So like I had a very progressive, and I clearly remember my grandmother ranting about Bill. She loved Bill Clinton, and she was mad about this. Like the Mormon church told her not to vote for Clinton, so to spite them, she put a Clinton sign on her lawn. And then the Dukakis thing, I remember her ranting about what they did to Dukakis. They made him. They did it to John Kerry too. You know, they make him look. He flip flopped. John Kerry was the flip flop thing.
I remember that. Yes. Yeah. I remember that a great deal. And you know, just the 1988 election had an effect on me because that was my first vote, and I was so angry that he didn't fight back because his advisors told him not to fight back. And then he finally started to fight back. He started to increase in the polls, but it was a little too late.
Well, and when you watch one of the things, I love watching those debates with Trump, the Republican debates with Trump, because he didn't take any shit. Just watching him mop the floor with those assholes, he was happily booed. And it's like you can't not after the neocons and all the garbage that they did. It's hard to watch him call out Bush for letting us get attacked on 9/11 when everyone's like, you know, Jeb Bush is like, my brother kept us safe after 9/11. He's like, yeah, but 9/11 happened on his watch, and the whole audience was like, oh no.
Yeah,
and then Trump's like, those are all his donors.
I remember that. It was the South Carolina debate, and when I was watching, I actually watched that, and I remember. As I said, I would listen to talk radio just to see what the other side said. And Rush Limbaugh was the most angry with Donald Trump on that debate that he's ever been.
I've always hated Rush Limbaugh too.
Yeah. He was really mad at Donald Trump. He's like Donald Trump. It's like Donald Trump is trying to win over Bernie Sanders supporters. Well,
really?
Realize that he sounded like Bernie Sanders more than a standard Republican. I mean, that's what he was, and he was just like yapping on about it. I said, yeah, that was probably Trump's best moment in 2016 when he was smacking the hell out of Ted Cruz, Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio. It was like he smacked them like they were the Three Stooges at the same time.
It was so good. It was so
beautiful.
Good. People,
they deserve it too.
Well, and I say this a lot, but what really changed my mind about Trump is this guy who's my cousin's husband, he's the best human being. You know, he's the kindest person. He does so much great. He's a construction guy. He does work for people pro bono free all the time. Just a really good, wholesome person. And me and him would always argue about politics when we get together, you know, friendly, but he was on the right and I'm a liberal hippie from Hollywood. And when we got into it about Trump, I go, look, Justin, like, you know, Trump doesn't give a shit about you. He shits on a golden toilet in a multi-million-dollar penthouse in Manhattan. And Justin looks at me and he goes, yeah, but he's not a Bush or a Clinton. And I went,
that's true. Yeah, he actually did tremendously weaken the Bush family dynasty and the Clintons. The Clintons a little bit. He did some. They got wounded out of it. And if there was one thing that Trump did, it was good. He wounded the Clintons, and he pretty much discredited the Bush family.
Well, and this is the other thing I clearly remember about going back to the media and being kingmakers and what they do to people and how they create these narratives. So Trump was one of the first very social media presidents. You know, that's how he won, because he got around the media through Twitter, and that's another reason they locked it all down after he won. But I have this clear memory when he was president. I followed the White House Twitter feed during Obama. And so it's not like I followed the White House because of Trump. I already followed it. And I was scrolling through my feed one day and the White House had put this video out, and it was Trump. And he was talking about meeting with the families of dead soldiers. And it got to me because he was visibly bothered by this, and you could see it. And he was telling this story about a dead tree, like being at this airfield where they're bringing bodies of soldiers home, and this mother throwing herself on a coffin draped with a flag of her son's coffin. And you could just the way he told the story, you could see that this man was like visibly affected by this, and he wanted to do something about it. And I was like, you never saw any of that kind of footage on CNN or MSNBC or even Fox, really. Like, I mean, I didn't really watch Fox, but maybe you did. But that's when I realized, wow, there really is like, and I'm not advocating for Trump. I don't think he's even probably he's still a long shot candidate, really. Like, they're really going at him, but I think it says something that both parties are and the establishment is united against him. And it's like someone like Bernie Sanders or even Ross Perot, who you probably remember, didn't have the balls or the network to get through, to break through that establishment like Trump did. And it's like, he's imperfect as hell, but maybe he, because of who he is, because of the brand he's built and the resources he has, he's the guy who can break the establishment down. So we actually maybe get back to a little bit closer of a democracy. I don't know. Like I'm not, you know, again, it's like, now I sound like a Trump supporter, but but based on what I've seen and in hindsight of everything that's happening and like what they're doing to him now with this like lawfare thing, I'm like, wow, maybe he was kind of more of a threat to the establishment than I thought.
Well, I'll tell you, even though I'm critical of Kyle Kalinske today, during his better moments in 2018, 2019, he said something to the effect of Donald Trump, Bernie Sanders, and AOC kind of broke the script in that regard. The tone policing that these politicians do, where everybody from both parties tries to have a Mitt Romney style demeanor.
Yeah.
Those three pretty much took that textbook, ripped it up, and and that's where Bernie, AOC, and Trump, all three had that in common at that time.
I think in Bernie's case, Bernie had a long history of authenticity. Like he had a long history of being like he had credibility because of his record. Trump, obviously, because he hasn't ever been in politics, it's like he was an outsider to that degree. Of course, he's not an outsider to the establishment. He's been part of the establishment for a long time, but enough of an outsider to Washington that they really went at him with everything that they could. And I was going to show, after the Hillary thing, the Russiagate thing, and how, that's a complete fraud. And it's like, me personally, it's like I worked in ad tech, and one of my jobs used to be detecting Russian fraud. So when all of the Russiagate stuff started coming out, and I was instantly skeptical of it, because I started reading these articles and going like, wait a minute, this doesn't prove anything. Like I do Russian fraud. Like I know how to tell what's what. And it's like, this is totally like obfuscated, weird, like unclear bullshit that they're citing here. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, and when I look at this whole Russia Gate thing, and it's not just Trump they went after Jill Stein. They accused her of being a Russian asset. They accused Bernie Sanders of being a Russian asset.
Yep.
They went after Tulsi Gabbard. It was also considered. Now they're doing that to RFK, and they're doing it to the U.S.
Like, and again, it's, how stupid do you have to be to buy that? You know what I mean? Like at this point, it's like, okay, it's pretty clear that anyone who says anything that's like critical is now Russian. Like,
yeah, I'm not like yay Putin or anything like that, but you hear that so much, you're just kind of like, I'm just like, is he really all that bad? The way that you almost have to sympathize. I mean,
not only that, I feel like the people that are constantly accusing Putin of having all this control and power over everything, they're the ones who are yay Putin. Like, it's like, do you really think Putin has that much control that he controls everything bad in America? Like, how powerful do you think this guy is?
They think that, and they said that about George Soros for years on the Republican side. I mean, it's just kind of like,
I mean, so this is another with the Republican stuff. I just, not to interrupt you, but it's like, that's one of the things where I think there's a lot of truth in those arenas that I ignored at one time. Like I was like, George Soros does fund a lot of shit, and I'm not saying it's nefarious. I'm sure he has his reasons and he has his money and he's welcome to do it, but
I mean, he's on the world scene. He's a shit lib, and they don't like that. I mean, he's not this Marxist, whatever they claim he is, and everything. And I get a little nervous with the way that Soros names gets thrown out for everything bad, because it's like Soros is going to eventually become the new Rothschild.
Yeah. Well, and it's also easy to accuse people of being an anti-Semite or something because they're like, oh, well, he's a Jewish guy who escaped the Holocaust, so you're an anti-Semite if you don't think that it's cool what he's doing.
Yeah, well, and now some people on the right will say, well, he collaborated with the Nazis, which might have been true, but look how young he was at the time when he was forced to do the same.
Yeah, I've read that story. What do you?
Well, John Ratzinger, Pope Benedict XVI, belonged to Hitler Youth in the 1930s. It's not because he was a Nazi. He was required to join Hitler's Youth in the 1930s.
Yeah.
And when he was old enough to fight in the army in World War II, he was a corporal. And guess what he did in World War II? He deserted the German army.
Yeah, all the people bitching about this stuff drive BMWs too.
Yeah, and the late Pope Benedict XVI. I mean, there were certain things about him that I disagreed with. He was very socially conservative, but I do not believe that he was some Nazi sympathizers or the Nazi Pope or anything like that, like they try to make him out to be.
It's crazy because there was a minute where I was one of those people who's like, yeah, of course, punch Nazis. But now I'm like, wait a minute, who's deciding who's a Nazi? Because now everyone's a Nazi. And like anyone, it's like, well, I'm not just going to punch someone because you said they're a Nazi. If they're like out there goose stepping saying like kill Jewish people, okay, then I'll punch them. But like, we need to have some hard evidence. Like people will make these claims. So like the pedophile thing, it's like people will make these accusations without any merit whatsoever, nowadays. And like, that's a serious thing to accuse someone of.
Well, I mean, as I said, the Democrats are useless. But when Marjorie Taylor Greene goes around and says the Democratic Party is the party of pedophiles, she's pretty much saying half of the country are pedophiles. I mean, she's got a right to say it, but I mean, she's, I mean, that's.
I support her right to make herself look stupid in that. On the other hand, she said a lot of stuff that I agree with. I have this clip of her. We don't have to play it right now, but I have this clip of her talking to Leslie Stahl about Ukraine, and she's on point. So I'll take that. But if she's saying, like, whenever anyone brings up the left or pedophiles or Hollywood or pedophiles, I'm always like, okay, Catholic Church now.
Yeah, well, and a lot of right wingers get caught, doing that.
The people that are the most insane, it's the Democrats are proof of this. The people that are the most too, but I feel like the Democrats have been infiltrated by the neoconservatives anyway, and it's like the people that project the hardest against like the most anti-gay Republicans were always the ones that got busted in a bathroom doing something shady with a male prostitute.
Exactly, or some TV evangelist. So I forgot Ted Haggard. I think I don't. I think it was Ted Haggard. I'm going to say I think because I don't want to.
I remember that's his name. I remember.
Yeah, I guess with a young male sniffing cocaine out of a young male's ass, or
it was meth.
Yeah. Oh, was it meth? Okay. Yeah. I mean, and then on Sunday, screaming, gays again. Just
remember Larry Craig, the Idaho senator in the bathroom, tapping his feet.
Yep, sure do. I sure do.
That was one of the guy who was like, there's footage of him go like, "You're a naughty, naughty boy, Bill Clinton." Like,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they go around, those that throw stones at glass houses, and it's funny when they get caught. I mean, it's like they're getting their just desserts for smearing for partisan reasons.
Do you know Whitney Webb? Do you know who Whitney Webb is?
Yes.
I watched her on, I think it was Glenn Beck. Excuse me. And she kind of pointed out how honey traps are like a huge thing in politics. And it all started actually with like the British intelligence and Israeli intelligence. And she talks about how they honeypot anyone with girls and earn sex stuff first. Like they tried to do it to JFK. Like there's like these well-documented stories about this Russian prostitute they tried to honeypot JFK with. Elliot Spitzer, remember Elliot Spitzer? I just talked about that the other day. Anthony Weiner, Al Franken. It's like, to me, and like, I don't care as long as they're not doing anything illegal. I really don't care about a politician's sex life. That's their business. I was married. I'm divorced now, so I know how tough it is to be married. And so I sympathize with dudes that cheat. Like, I don't think it's okay, but I can understand why men or women cheat in their relationships, or maybe they have an arrangement with their spouse, but all that kind of stuff. It's like Donald Trump blew the lid off that too, because he didn't give a fuck. He's just like, yeah, I do what I want. Like, fuck off.
Yeah. I mean, Donald Trump is as shady and as slick as Bill Clinton was in the 1990s. A lot of Republicans were just like. But
he doesn't pretend to be above it, though. That's the thing I think people like about him. He's like, he's not pretending not to be. He's like, this is who I am.
Yeah, and Bill Clinton did try to put a covering over it and everything, but they would go and get mad at Bill Clinton because he's a Democrat, but not get mad at Donald Trump
Yeah.
when he's Republican. Of course, if
And
he was
Donald
still,
Trump was originally a Democrat back in the day. The one thing I will like when the one racist thing I always pointed to with Trump was the Central Park 5 thing. But I think he's even come around about that. You know, like with the birther thing in that article, it specifically said he's like Barack Obama was born in the United States, period. He said that.
I'm gonna tell you something about Trump. Even today, sometimes I do think that Trump is a grifter, and meaning that I don't believe he believes half the shit he says. All that right wing stuff.
That's fair.
I think he does it for clicks. He does it for views. He manipulates the media. He knows how to do it, and he knows that he can reel in an audience. And he knows that some of these really nutty right wing people will follow him. Just say the right things, and they'll be like. He knows that there is a need out there, and if he could do the same thing to shit libs, he would have gone that route.
Yeah.
And so I think he doesn't believe half the stuff he says, and
I would agree with that.
And that's why he sort of had the Alex Jones effect on me. It's like I should be angry with Donald Trump when he said all these things, but I end up more than anything else. I end up laughing at it because I'm like, "Whoa, really?" I mean, and when he says something moderate every once in a while, then the crowd boos at him.
Yeah, my big thing with Trump now is I just look, like I was explaining earlier, I look back on things that he did that I was like, wow, I totally thought he said X, but he said Y. You know what I mean? Because the media like totally twisted the perception of him intentionally because he was a threat to the establishment on some level, obviously. I mean, not that he moved the goddamn Israeli embassy to Jerusalem, which was like a non-starter. So you can't really call him an anti-Semite, you know? But anyway, we should wrap up, man. We got like 2 minutes left and then we're at 2 hours and
right. No problem.
I got to jump in a few, but we should do this again, man, for sure.
I agree.
A couple
weeks. If you ever
weeks.
want to come back on my show, just let me know. We'll make the arrangements.
Yeah. Maybe I'll do yours next. Let's bounce back and forth. It doesn't have to be this week or next, like whenever you got time.
Okay. I got some guests lining up, but we can look in the next couple of weeks into this if you like.
Yeah, let's do it. And you should come back on here again too.
All right.
Because it's nice. It's nice having the volley, you know, like I hate just listening to myself talk the whole time. It's nice having an alternate perspective.
Yeah.
You have a lot of knowledge too.
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate it. As I say, since discovering your show a couple of months ago, I was like, I like this show. Your show is in my steady stream of diet with Due Dissidents, RBN, Jimmy Dore, so you get I watch your show just as much as I watch theirs. So
I
you're
appreciate that, man.
Combo Couch, all Gray Zone. So as I said, I was like just like I like this show. So
I appreciate that, man. And you've been like a huge booster for me too. So like you have a bigger audience than me. Like you have just having me on your show is a huge boost. So I definitely appreciate it.
Oh, you'll probably surpass me. Don't worry. I
just got started, but still I just know that, man, that's huge for me. And I'll always appreciate it. And this has been awesome. Honestly, we should do it again soon.
I agree. 100% agree. Yeah. My family are visiting, so I promise to spend a little bit of time with them too. So.
Oh, you got to do that. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. So, all right. Well, then I guess we'll do this again soon.
Yeah, we'll be in touch. Thank you, Willie. Appreciate you, man.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Have a good one.